Alright, hello, greetings and welcome in everyone. Hello. My name is Harrier Citadel, avian alien sentinel of Fort Misthaven, perpetrator of creative chaos and general maker of things, and welcome in. It's good to see you all for this another catch-up stream on our reanalysis fight, combat style analysis madness. It's going to be an interesting evening of decoding outfits and biologies and all of those things. Once again, I am looking forward to it. Oh boy. Fun times. Sorry for running a little bit late today. I was having a very important conversation with a person and I could not put that down. So I apologize about that, but it just needed to come to a slightly more natural conclusion, and it concluded just in the nick of time for the slight delay, but it's okay. It was an important conversation, sure. I think that due diligence was exercised on that front. Anyway, that besides the point. Today we are going to be yapping more about different characters that have been submitted to our previous fighting style analysis event that ran, I think it was in October. And that was the idea behind it, was that everyone would submit their character, whether it's a VTuber design or an original character or what have you, and based on the outfit and whatever little I can see about their lore in the blurb provided or on their profile, I would do an analysis of what their fighting style looks like based on that information. So, small disclaimer, if you've not been at the previous ones before, this is not a critique session in any way, shape, or form. This isn't about how good a design is or doing anything along those lines. We're just doing an assessment of, from what we can see, what are the expected behaviors, right? That's what this is all about. So, at no point is this any sort of critique or anything. If someone is low scoring, it just means that they are not a combat class character design. So, please keep that in mind as we go through our submissions. Also, I think we will be able to finish this up today in terms of our catch-ups. So from basically after the end of tonight, I think, we will actually have hashtag reanalysis fight open perpetually. So you can either submit your character via the appropriate channel in the Fort Misthaven Discord server, or via the YouTube community page, which is now open, or via either X or Blue Sky in the hashtags for reanalysis fight, and we shall assess your character whenever we, see it. In the next available stream slot, we shall do so. It takes approximately a half an hour to assess each character, so it will more likely than not, if there are multiple character submissions in a week, we will probably spread that over a couple of days. Alex Oldfish, hello, welcome in, good to see you. I hope that your today has been, what day of the week has it been? It has been Wednesday. I hope that Wednesday has been treating you well. Depending on where you are in the world, it might already be Thursday. Hello. Yes. Let me think. Is there anything else that we need to cover quickly before we dive into the meat of things today? Tomorrow we are going to be playing Final Fantasy XIV. It's going to be another fairly yap heavy stream because we are... Oh, Alex? Alex? What? Again? Thank you so much. Oh my word. Thank you. Gasp. Greatly appreciated. Oh my word. Ah! Greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. Yes. Oh my word. Wow. I love Final Fantasy XIV. I'm so glad you do. We are doing a free trial completionist run. I have not ever played past A Realm Reborn, unfortunately. I have a really bad history when it comes to completing games in any way, shape, or form. So we're doing a free trial completionist run. The last time we played, we just came back to disaster in the Waking Sands. So if you're familiar with the game, you know exactly what just happened. But that is where we're presently in the main scenario quest. I have only got one class currently unlocked, and I'm going to be finishing the main scenario quest in that class, and then I'm going to be using the most of the free trial to level up as much of the subclasses as possible. And try and get through all of the side quests that are available to me and everything before going into the point of no return where one needs to sub into the game in order to keep playing. Are you DPS? Or I decided on a whim to start as a warrior this time. So I am... I usually start as a dragoon, and then go ninja. I usually start as dragoon so that I start out the story in Gridania and then go ninja. But yeah, I started as a warrior this time. So yeah, tank, good luck. Yeah, I am currently only playing with NPCs as raid party members, but who knows, maybe later that will change. Presently I don't have anyone in early game who is playing along with me, so I know a couple of people who are in endgame content, but when one is doing free trial stuff, it's like, yeah, there's no partying up with known individuals. So yeah, at the moment I've only been playing on stream. I might do some offline crafter class leveling or do that in Zatsudan streams. I don't know. We will burn that bridge when we get to that part of the game. But yes, we are going to be continuing with the MSQ tomorrow. And that's largely going to be voice acting practice. So we shall see how that goes. It's been a while, so I can't remember a bunch of the voices off the top of my head. But I'm starting to slowly commit a couple of them to memory. It's taking a little bit of time. And obviously I can't emulate all of them perfectly, but, you know, it's practice, right? So we do the thing. We do the thing. One of these days I'd like to get a guest on board to actually co-voice act with me, but... don't see that happening in a hurry at the moment. We shall see. We shall see. We'll work out and get to a point where that might be a thing. Potentially. In any case, we are doing combat style analyses. We're doing combat style analyses, and I think we should probably head over to that scene. And let me just see. I need to be in... that placement, I think, yes. And I need... Gosh, things are not as set up as I thought they were set up to be. No, okay. Add scene. Ugh, sorry guys. I need to very briefly, I thought I had this sorted, but apparently Let me just quickly studio mode this. Let me just head back over here real quick. Blah. Whoopsie, whoopsie. Let me just quickly do this. Cancel. Add. Gasp, it went away. No. Alright. Just quickly resetting things up because I was apparently an absolute fool. In terms of doing my setups. Almost there. And here. Scale that down. Almost got it. Can't believe I had to rebuild this, but anyway. Almost there, almost there, almost there. Sorry. Okay. And now, what I need to do is determine where I'm going to be standing. I think I'm going to be in that side placement. Okay. So we go back there, studio mode off, and now we come over here. And I'm gonna go I need a different placement for this in its entirety. I need to sit over here. I need to be small and out the way and over here. Okay, I will set a new hotkey for this position. Let me just do that real quick. Camera. Reanalysis fight. Hotkey action. Move model. Select. Record position. Okay, I will put that into my hotkey madness at the end of stream when I am done. Because I'm going to be here for pretty much the rest of the day. Okay. So, this is what people are going to receive at the end of this. This was the last person that we worked on their radar chart that they received. This was for Arbiter. And the next person that is on our list, and I see that I need to still make an adjustment here. Come on, let me just go here. Whoopsie. I need to just make an adjustment because things did not end up working the way I expected they would. There we go. Collapse that way a little bit. A smidge more. go. Alright, that should do the trick. Okay, so the first person that we're going to work with tonight is going to be Apollyon Live, the Mad Angel. Ooh, okay, so spoiler, I did in fact do his character design. You designed him, so how do you think he fights? Oh boy. This is going to be interesting. So, let us have a look at Apollyon. The initial briefing that I got with him when we were doing his character design was very much basically taking a chibi-fied design and basically just making it a little bit more grown up. So I'm going to just go out here because this is the best view to see it in IC. So in Apollyon's case, we have a couple of key features that we need to look at. Firstly, we are dealing with an angelic character, which means that there is an ethereal part of the entire thing going on. And there are wings, which are kind of helpful. We have wings that are obviously magical in nature because they do not, in fact, organically attach to his person. I think in terms of species perk, that general being able to fly, that is a significant species perk every single time. It immediately adds 2 points to your species perk score. What I am going to do is I'm just going to quickly come over here to our filters and make the selection. There we go. So we know where we're at. Aside from that, we do have the additional head wings, which I suppose in flight will probably mostly act as a rudder aid, considering there is no tail involved. So more likely than anything else, the head wings are going to be involved in steerage and maneuverability to help compensate a little bit for the lack of a rudder at the back end of the entire flight scenario. So that pushes the wing advantage up to like a 3. As far as the rest of the evolutionary advantages go, this is pretty much standard humanoid build and everything, so there's not really all that much that can be added in the case of our species perk. So I think over here I am gonna put that strictly at a 3 because the flight does give us something. Hey, come on, put a number in here, please and thank you. There we go. And we're going to put that strictly on a 3 because we do have the wings, which give us a flight capacity, and we do have something that we can use for flight steerage on the head wings. It's not the most ideal location for a rudder. It's mostly an aesthetic decision. And it's probably also, if we're looking at a species-wide consideration, it would probably also be used for communication and emoting. So in that sense, I can see that having some social advantage over only having facial expressions involved there. The next thing we've got to look at on Apollyon's outfit and general design and build is durability. So there is 0 armor of any description anywhere visible on his outfit or on his person. If we look at the view where he's got the t-shirt on without the jacket, which is very, very small on your screen, but I hope that you can see it either which way. So there's no armor of any description anywhere on him. So The only defense that he's actually got is his jacket and sweatpants, really. Which, to be fair, is at the very least going to be some protection against a low-level abrasion. So that has some armor class advantage. We have full limb coverage as well, which means that in terms of flight and getting cold, there should be at least some protection against that as well. So it's not like we're dealing with someone who is going to be at, say, 1,000 feet elevation and no thermal protection whatsoever. So, he's got that going for him. I would probably also put that at around about a 3 on account of that. There's not really much else to say. He's got some thermal protection, he's got some sun protection, but actually I'm going to make it a 2 because he's not wearing shoes. He's only got socks. So that is... as soon as he lands on terra firma, that is going to be a little bit of an uncomfortable walking situation for sure. He's only got socks on that front. Then the next thing to look at is gonna be maneuverability, and once again, when we've got wings, that is a major boon to one's maneuverability score. That immediately puts us as like a 5, because when you can fly, you can get places super easily. The sweatpants are loose, so they're not going to really inhibit movement all that much in terms of hip rotation in any way, shape or form. I would imagine that the lanyards that are around his thighs and knees can potentially hook up on things, so that might actually be a little bit of a challenge to work around. And maybe also, depending on the kind of movement that we're dealing with, those lanyards could also, you know, flop around slightly uncomfortably as well. Not an issue when one is moving upwards and forwards, but maybe as soon as one is beginning to take a landing or go feet first in any direction, as one does when one is slowing down to come in for a landing, the lower torso tends to swing forward, get the undercarriage down, as it were. So in that situation, maybe it might be a little bit uncomfortable, and the lanyards might hook on a few things, so I'll take that into consideration. As far as his build goes, it seems to be marginally athletic, which means that there's probably a reasonable amount of physical flexibility involved, although I cannot speak for what sort of total level of flexibility we might actually see in practice. There's basically no restriction on movement on that t-shirt as well, and the hoodie, it looks like it's got a loose enough arm eye to be able to not worry too much about getting stuck on in only having some maneuverability in the downward position. So with all of that considered, and also the head wings, which maybe will assist a little bit in terms of directionality in flight, Also, being able to tuck, it should also not be a resistance on drag or anything along those lines. I'm going to put the maneuverability here on an 8. I feel like an 8 is a reasonable maneuverability score in this particular case. Now, brute force. Let's think. Once again, looking at the build, we're seeing something that is marginally aesthetic. Athletic. Getting the two words confuzzled, as one does. But not necessarily a power build here. There's nothing on the limbs that indicates anything that would give extra gumption on any sort of an impact. And as far as what I do know about this character, which is quite limited, there isn't really any carried weapon or summoned weapon of any description that I know of that would potentially increase that brute force score. I also haven't got any sort of an aesthetic gauge on what kind of ethereal or magic type skills might be involved. So, I am gonna say, on a brute force level, I am probably gonna rank this I'm probably gonna rank this at about also a 3, because there is some sign of some physical strength, but not a lot. And there's nothing indicating any additional power system adding on to that. Range, let's have a look-see. There's nothing visible on the outfit that could be thrown unless one considers perhaps the halo. I don't know if the halo could maybe be thrown, if it's a physical object. Similarly, the beanie could potentially be used as a vision obstruction object, and the jacket as well. But there's not an awful lot of loose items on this outfit. The shackles are quite limited in terms of the chain length, so there's very little that could be potentially used there to extend reach. So I think range here is actually also quite short unless there is a magical element of some description here, which I don't have any visual markers or indicators to functionally work off of. So in that situation, I'm gonna keep the range also fairly close, because I can't see anything that actually indicates any sort of ranged capacity in this build. Because he can throw a beanie and he can throw a jacket, I'm going to put him on a 2, not on a 1 or a 0. Because he's got at least something that he can throw, if nothing else. Magic is implied, but not visible. next is gonna be adaptability. Okay, so here, wings generally give you a couple of options, and some level of maneuverability automatically gives you a couple of options. As far as adaptability for various environments, the fact that he's not got any kind of footwear immediately means that, let me just get out the way over there so you can see the socks. As soon as you've not got any footwear, it's immediately going to put you at a disadvantage on various kinds of terrain. Immediately, because all of a sudden your feet are actually unprotected. And considering that one's feet are a endpoint weapon, if one is using your body as a weapon, that is a major disadvantage in terms of the number of options that you've got to actually hit with. So, not having anything on the feet is a little itty bitty bit of a problem on that front of adaptability. The outfit itself has few things on it that would increase a number of options that you might have available to you. Like I mentioned earlier, perhaps throwing the beanie or the jacket, or I don't know if it's possible, but maybe throwing the halo. Those throwing items are pretty much the only visible levels of adaptability that I can see. But also potentially, considering the fact that these wings are floating wings, they're not actually physically attached to the person, Apollyon might actually be able to dismiss a wing that is about to take a hit. Which, as far as adaptability goes, is pretty good. It is helpful to be able to kind of just poof a wing out of existence for a moment, as it's about to take on an injury. That is something that is kind of useful. I don't know if he might be able to shoot out quill feathers, maybe, as well. Also would fall under the range options, but we've got no indications of the skill set that goes with this, so there are limits to what one can expect wholeheartedly. I would say, as far as adaptability goes, there are a couple too many restrictions in terms of being able to handle different kinds of terrain. And having gear of any description that can provide more options. Like, one could argue that he can kick with the shackle, or use one of the shackles on his wrist to provide a bludgeoning blow, but I am worried that doing so might actually cause more damage to him than to his opponent. I'm scared that might do more damage to him than to his opponent, so I'm gonna put his adaptability at like a 4, because I can see that he has got some options with a flight, he's got some options with maneuverability, he's got some options with throwing items, but overall there's a very limited amount of tools at his disposal in a combat scenario that I can immediately see. He might actually even have trouble getting his jacket off, now that I look at it, to even be able to do anything with it as an impromptu weapon. Because of the size of the sleeves versus the size of the shackles. Like, I don't know if he has a key for his shackles to be able to get those padlocks off, or if it's something that it just can't come off, in which case I think you might actually have a little bit of an issue getting that jacket off around it. So even in that sense, there's a little bit of limited adaptability in terms of being able to weaponize his jacket. Next, magic. Magic is implied because of the floaty wings and the fact that he's an angel. So there is some implied mythical, ethereal skill set. But we have, once again, no indication of the scale and extent thereof. The only thing we can see is that the wings are floaty. That's the only thing that we can see. So for lack of more information, I'm going to put it on a 5 because we can see that there is magic, but we can't see what all it is capable of doing. Number next is stealth, and unfortunately this is not a design that passes the jingle test because we have chains. We have multiple chains on the shackles on each of his limbs, each of which has, according to this reference sheet, 8 links per chain, and then still the actual connection to the shackle, and the padlocks on the opposite sides, which are all going to chink and jingle and make clinking sounds as he moves around. So unfortunately on his stealth score, that is immediately going to take that down to like a 6. That being said, there's not actually an awful lot else on him that can make a noise. The zipper for his jacket can also be a little bit of a jingly item against the tags of the zip chain. So that is also going to account for that reduction in the stealth score. Beyond that, there's not actually anything on him that would make much noise. Maybe fabric rustling of that loose jacket and the lanyards around his legs. A little bit of fabric rustling noises from there. What does count in his favor, which is contrary to the durability score, is that he's got socks on. So there's no shoes that can squeak. That does count in his favor, and on the stealth score. So, on that front, I am going to split the difference between the walking stealth with no shoes that can squeak, or no hard soles that can make noise, against the jingles. The jingles takes us down to a 6, but unfortunately we've also got the additional problem that those chains on his ankles are actually going to drag on the ground if he walks. Okay, so if the chains on the ground are going to jingle as he walks, that's going to be a major consideration. It's going to be a major consideration. Shoo. I think that's going to probably also put stealth at about a 5. Weapons and ammunition. We can see very little in the line of weapons. We don't have any pouches containing any ammunition. We've got no carried weapons that we can see. At best, I can imagine that potentially he can weaponize his halo. Maybe, if that is possible. I do not know. That still only makes 1 weapon in his arsenal. So I'm going to put weapons and ammunition at a 1. It's not quite a 0 because he's got stuff that he can throw, but he's not carrying anything really that he can weaponize. Also, that was our hydrate reminder, so everyone, acquire your nearest safe consumption beverages, and let's take a sip. Alright. Almost there. Now, last thing is going to be our gear alliance in a fight. He's not carrying really very much in the line of gear. Which implies that if he's going to be in a fight, he's not going to necessarily be relying on it very much. By implication of absence. So I don't think necessarily an angel will necessarily find himself in a combat scenario where access to advanced weaponry is going to be the make or break. I don't think. But depending on magic skill and whether the halo can be weaponized, or if he's got some unlisted summoning ability for a weapon of some description that we just don't know what it looks like and we can't see. I'm gonna put Gear Alliance on a 1 as well, because we can't see anything, but we also can't see that he would be able to go without any sort of tool aid. I'm looking at his build, because when we were doing the design process, the slender build was very much requested to not be two-toned. So in that sense, I don't get the sense that one should expect that he's going to be able to mulch through any opponent unarmed without any assistance of any tool of any description. So I'm going to put the Gear Reliance on 1, because I'm going to put it on 2. Because he doesn't carry anything, but also because I'm not going to assume that he is of the kind of build and combat class that can get away without anything at all in terms of tool assistance. Alright, and that was the first one. So thank you, Apollyon, for your submission. I greatly appreciate it. I will be sending you your radar graph in the comments at the end of this stream. So thank you very much for your submission. Thank you. Alright, I am just going to quickly clear the airwaves because I'm still in recovery from being sick. And then we will move on to the next one. One moment, please, while I just mute out for a second. Ah, wrong button. Okay, so now we're just going to set our timer again for the next one and the next hydrate. There we go. And our next person is going to be Marius A. Jackson. So let me just switch over to that graph, that empty graph. There we go. So, Marius. Okay, so this is a cave-dwelling fae. And immediately we can see that there is a bit more of a muscular build. Oh, hello. Harrier art. Whoopsie. Interesting how that landed up in there. Whoopsie. So we've got a more muscular build immediately. And we've got a tail. Pointed ears, which probably implies slightly better hearing. Not sure exactly what the horns do. So let's have a look at this. In terms of species perks, it's also got claws as well. So that's, as far as armament goes, definitely a species perk. Okay, so let's break this down bit by bit. +1 on species perk for the claws. +1 on species perk for the tail, because that's probably going to give him a balance advantage. Because it doesn't look like this tail is horse-like in the sense that it is just hair. It looks like it's furred. I'm kind of in the way again. Hold up. Let me just stand over. No, over there. No, come back. So the tail does look more lion-like, which implies that there is a skeleton on the inside, which implies that there is some level of control over this tail. And that is gonna be useful for balance. So +1 on balance with the tail. So +1 for claws, +1 for the tail. +1 on the sensory of the pointed ears, which implies slightly better hearing than on a human. Chudu, tail instantly, +2 adaptability. Potentially. Welcome in, Chudu. Hello. So as far as species perk goes, that is immediately we are on a 3. Now, that comes to the elephant in the room, which is the horns. Now, the horns or antlers, depending on the art style. There's tails without bones. Yeah, like if you consider a horse's tail, only a part of the length has actually got a bony structure in it. So approximately, if you consider the full length of a horse's tail length, if you look at the hair length, only about the first third of it is actually got any sort of bony structure in it. Obviously, otherwise it would not be able to lift and swish and all of the things that a tail needs to be able to do. But the rest of its length is all just hair. This does not seem to be the case based off of this illustration. There actually seems to be a functional bony core to the tail, which implies having vertebrae all the way to the tip, and that implies being able to maneuver it to some degree. Yes. The curiosity of tails anatomy. So yeah, the tail is going to definitely potentially have a massive impact on balance. The claws are going to be helpful in attacking things. The ears are going to potentially have a higher sensory advantage, which when it comes to detecting enemies incoming, that's going to be a huge thing. But the horns or antlers, these are going to be the interesting thing. So, based off of model art, he has got a very standard human neck, and it's a little bit tricky to see. Let me just shrink this down just a smidge more for you guys so that you've got more to work with here. Very much human proportioned neck. Now, when it comes to the use of horns and antlers in the natural world. Something that is common is that they will be used for defense and rucking. Those are the two things that the horns or antlers are usually used for. So either literally headbutting an opponent into submission, or using your head at an odd angle to throw in some damage. However, how much damage you can actually effectively cause is largely determined by the musculature of the neck. Like, significantly determined by the musculature of the neck. Because that's what's causing the movement. If you've got a dainty neck, there's not going to be an awful lot of power behind that swing. Even giraffes use their horns for combat, but they have the advantage of what is proportionally to their head size, a very muscular neck with a lot of potential momentum behind the impact. So they are built for that backwards style headbutt. And that is something that not a lot of horned humanoid characters take into consideration. And the other major consideration, always do your neck exercises? Exactly. The other thing to take into consideration is the angle at which a horn is moving, and also where the origin point is on the head relative to would it actually be able to reach something with the normal range of motion that your head has, right? So if we look at horns or antlers that are positioned more towards the front of the head as the base root positioning, what generally is going to happen is that there's going to be at least some forward protrusion, which when you're doing a forward movement on a headbutt is going to be slightly useful. But what we also see across all of our available artworks is that there is an almost immediate backward sweep to these things because they seem to be roughly based on antlers. And those generally are going to only be fully effective when you are ramming at your opponent with the crown or the top of your head. So it's going to be your eyes are facing basically 90 degrees away from whatever you're trying to hit on a forward-facing set of eyes like this. So whether you're actually going to hit your target or not is a little bit of a gamble. And there's also the major risk if you are charging in that way, that whatever it is you're fighting might actually end up hitting you between your antlers. And on a human skull, there is a very big weak point right in the middle of the top of the head, because that is kind of the thinnest part of your skull on a humanoid, because it is something that kind of only grows closed after being born. One skull is designed to be flexible really early, which means that you've got this huge weak spot right in the center of the skull, which unfortunately in this case is an exposed area here. Is that a Biden? Hello, welcome in. Toaster, thank you for the save. Let me hit the save button on our spreadsheet accordingly. Thank you, thank you. So while horns in theory could be used as weapons, it's all very much dependent on how they are actually used, what they're shaped like, and generally how they persist as well. Antlers have the additional disadvantage of being something that sheds. Does that make a unicorn horn better or worse? Actually, a unicorn horn is a pretty significantly good weapon, because it angles forward and is usually sort of in line with your line of sight. It's also not directly on the weakest point of your head as well. So in terms of being able to use that for a more controlled slicing action or a visually aimed piercing action, a unicorn horn is actually quite effective. I would say unicorn horn for combat purposes can be more effective than a lot of the other horn shapes that I have seen on humanoid characters, for sure. But we are not talking about unicorns or other horned characters. We are talking specifically about Marius here. And in his case, while we do have that opening in the crown, which would be a potential weakness or a potential point that could be exploited in a ramming scenario, if we anticipate that the horns, if they are used in combat, are more going to be used in a more side oriented sweeping sort of a fashion, I think it could still do quite a bit of damage. It is quite close in terms of profile to his head as well, so the range on them is not great, but they do have some benefits. So that is going to go into his advantage. To some degree. Another thing that is an advantage, if we consider what we know about him, consider he is a cave-dwelling fae, is that chances are he's got pretty decent night vision. Like, it's kind of tricky to see with the selection of images that we've got, but he's got kind of big eyes. He's got kind of big eyes, and that probably means that as a cave-dwelling fae, he has decently good night vision, which, if we are considering where he is more likely than not going to be found, is going to put him at a strategic environmental advantage as well. So overall, if we consider, we already have +3 on the peripherals, +4 with night vision. I'm gonna give the antlers a +6 because they have got some advantages in terms of their movement, and then they're not too short and dainty to be of any practical purpose. So I'm gonna put our overall species perk presently on a +6, I think. I think we're going to put our species perk on a +6. Because he's got a lot going for him in his advantages, considering where he is more likely than anything to be found. Okay. Next is going to be durability. Now, I'm not going to give him a particularly high score on this because, once again, we have an exposed abdomen and chest and throat, which are all things that are vital areas. Also, no armor on any part of his body that we can see. So, I can't give him a durability score of higher than 5 on that front. What I can say is that considering the wooden shoes, let me just scroll down over here so that you can see them a little bit better. Can I scroll down? No, I can't scroll down. Yeah. He has got wooden shoes. Can we see it in this picture? Not very clearly, no. No, it's obscured in both pictures. Which is a little bit of a, I suppose, armor advantage, especially over the last one where we had no shoes. We had just socks for protection on the feet. So I think having that at the very least means that the feet are not in immediate danger of being crushed. And there is going to be some protection against terrain. What's also not easy to see from where you guys are, but where I can see quite clearly, is that the shoes are also raised. So it's not quite a platform, and it's not quite a getter type of platform or raising or stilt. But there is definitely that height. It's somewhere between a platform and a getter, from what I can tell. And that height does mean that in terms of dealing with wetter terrain, he's not going to get bogged down in that quite so easily. The shoe does cover the majority of his foot and looks like it is going to stick on his foot pretty well no matter how he moves. So that also doesn't look like it's something that's going to fall off in a hurry. I think the biggest armor plot on him is going to be this, what looks like a wrestling belt, which is going to provide at least some lower abdominal protection. Not much, but at least some. So I'm gonna give a durability score of at least 2 on that front, but I'm going to raise that to a 3 considering that he has got a jacket which is going to also protect him from minor abrasions, and the long pants are also going to protect the legs from minor abrasions, from like going through a very small gap in a cave. You're going to scrape a couple of things here and there, I think. So on the durability score, I'm probably going to put that on a 3. Yeah, I can't give it more than a 3. I can't give it more than a 5, but there's not enough to give me more than a 3, I don't think. Alright, the next part is going to be maneuverability. Now, we've immediately got a +1 on this because of the tail. Actually, I would even dare say a +2, because the amount of balance advantage that a tail provides is not insignificant, especially when it's a more dexterous tail, like what is implied here. So that is immediately going to be a major contributor. And also considering that we have a very well developed core, that is going to imply a lot of control over body movement. Like a lot of control over body movement is implied by a strong core. How that's going to work on flexibility, is also going to vary on a case-by-case basis. We are dealing with a more lithe build than a bulky build, so I am going to assume it's more flexibility-based than barge through walls-based sort of strengths. And it would also make sense to be quite maneuverable when you are a cave dweller, because some caves are convoluted, like super convoluted, and it takes a near octopus-like level of physical maneuverability to squeeze yourself through incredibly tight spaces in a cave. So I am, with that piece of contextual information, some level of high maneuverability is implied, because he's got to be able to squeeze through those tight gaps and generally maneuver around otherwise very precarious obstacles in the dark. Like, it's one thing to be maneuverable in daylight. It's another thing to do so around a unmappable obstacle course in the dark. So I have to actually put maneuverability at a really high level here, because the sensory stuff definitely adds to that. The night vision is a huge advantage there. And the obvious core strength is a huge advantage there. The tail is a huge advantage there. And the fact that the footwear does not look like it's about to fall off at any given moment is a huge advantage there. So I have to put maneuverability at a... I'm going to put maneuverability at a 7 with all of those considerations. I have to put maneuverability high with all of those considerations, because while flight or teleportation would make that just that much more maneuverable, this was pretty much on the limit of what an unwinged humanoid would be able to achieve, if I had to guesstimate. Right, so the next point is gonna be our brute force. Brute force is gonna definitely be next. And with that, once again, we have got a bit more of a powerful build than what we saw in a couple of our other entries. So with baseline human musculature of this level, I'm going to expect nothing less than a 3. Like, I would expect nothing less than a 3. But I'm probably going to err more towards, like... I'm probably going to err more towards a 6, because we've also got implications of other areas that can hit hard. Like, being able to do a brutish swing with the antlers, or a heavy kick with those wooden clogs. Those are things that are definitely going to add to the brute force sort of a score. So I might even go so far as to put brute force all the way up at like a 7. If I'm comparing against similar designs that we've worked on in the past, I'm going to put brute force at like a 7. Based off of the build, the antlers, the clogs. It seems reasonable on that front. Then we have the question of range. Now on that one, I have to say the range is definitely going to be much more limited. We're definitely looking at a close range character. The belt is not of a sort that can be retconned into some sort of a weapon easily, I don't think. It's the sort of thing that one wants to keep as armor because it is the only piece of armor on him. Like, we're dealing with a range 3 melee range at best. I also don't see him wanting to throw his clogs, even though he could if push comes to shove. But literally the only loose items on him are the belt, the shoes, the flowers, which I don't know if they are just... I don't know if they're just decoration or if they're actually organically sprouting from him. I'm not sure. Like, I suppose if push comes to shove, those rings on the tip of his tail could be thrown as well. And the jacket being used to either act as a melee grapple or also some short-range melee view obstructing tool as well. Potentially also wrapped around an arm and used as a fabric shield. So, range, I have to... Yeah, it's the melee plus the tail length. Like, the tail doesn't have anything on it, like, the metal rings at the end look like the only thing on the tail that could actually cause damage. So I think it would be also better for maybe getting some fur in the opponent's eyes, maybe. As that sort of a strategic sort of a utilization rather than actually being used to cause damage. So I can't put the range at anything more than a 3. I can't put the range at anything more than a 3 here. There's just not enough that could potentially extend that range beyond melee. Then the next point is going to be adaptability. Okay, now here I'm just going to just quickly put myself... Here is maybe a better spot for me to... Here is where I'm going to sit. Here is where I'm going to sit for these. Okay. Yeah. So for adaptability, the tail does help. But I think there are going to also be some strict limitations on this. Being a cave dweller, and with that implication of the better night vision, it does mean that if he goes into any bright environments, he might actually be at a disadvantage. Because of, you know, burning of the retina in bright light. So that might actually be a little bit of a challenge in terms of limiting what sort of environments he can actually work in. That said, the higher maneuverability score does give him a lot that he can potentially do. The decent physicality on a martial arts level does give him some options in terms of what he'll be able to do. Being able to use the tail or the antlers to cause some damage or act as a distraction or pivot in a way that an opponent might not necessarily expect. Those are all things that do work in his favor. Despite that, there is not any gear on him that would give him additional options. So, considering that, I'm going to put the adaptability score at about a... and that was a hydrate. So, I'm going to put the adaptability score at about a 5, I think. because we can see some adaptability, but we've also got some limitations. But the major limitation of potentially light, that is going to be a big one, because it's an environmental limitation. I don't know how he would be able to adapt to a brighter environment. Like, he ought to probably be able to eventually adapt. It just depends on how quickly he's thrown into it. And if an opponent that he's facing might be using light as a weapon, because that could be something that gets used against him as well. So, I'm going to leave it there. But that was the hydrate timer. So everyone, acquire your nearest safe for consumption beverages, and let's take a sip. Okay. Next is going to be magic. Now, he is a fae. Fae by nature are magical creatures. So some sort of magic is implied, but we have absolutely no idea what it looks like. Like, we have no idea what it looks like whatsoever. We've got no indication of whether the magic is entirely channeled into his organic adaptations, or if it is also going to have external skill manifestations. So without that without that visual indication of anything to go by, I know that it's there because fairy, but I can't give it anything more than a 2 because I've got nothing else. I've got nothing to work with in terms of visual cues in the current range of illustrations at my disposal. Then next is gonna be stealth. Now, he passes the jingle test because there are no chains, there are no zipper buckles or toggles or anything that we can see. The belt hasn't got loose clanky parts. There's nothing hanging from his antlers. He's got no jangly earrings. So he passes the jingle test, which so far, stealth rating immediately quite high. However, he has got the loose open jacket, which can potentially have some fabric rustling, and he's got wooden shoes, which are gonna clunk a little bit on a stone floor. Hashtag jingle check, yeah. Yeah. The jingle test is real, guys. The jingle test as a stealth thing is real. Ow, 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 ow. I just choked on air. Ow! That's a skill. Okay. So, the fabric rustle and the wooden shoes. He passed the jingle test, but not the clonk test. Yep. For every advantage, there is a disadvantage that comes in somewhere else, right? Right? These are things that one needs to pay attention to when you are designing a stealth type characters. Will they pass the jingle test? Will they pass the clonk test? Now, as a cave dweller, I don't know how much time he's actually going to spend on his feet. Because I suppose that would be limited mostly to the larger caverns. When maneuvering through tight spaces, like really tight winding caves, I don't think it's going to be as much of an issue. That's a skill. I feel bad because you're in pain, but that was funny. Yeah, the dropsies and the choking on air are things that happen in my family all the time. I'm sorry. But no. Anyway, we digress. Anyway. So In that case, I guess on the durability front as well, that would kind of maybe be a little bit of a consideration, that he hasn't got anything protecting his knees or elbows aside from his pants and jacket, which could potentially do with a little bit of extra padding in those areas just to help wriggle through those spaces. So I don't know how much time he actually spends on his feet, but in a combat scenario, some ability to maneuver is implied. Like, you're not going to have a fight in a place where no one can really move around. Like, not feasibly anyway. Like, the number of disadvantages that apply to a potential combatant in a restricted to maneuver area, like, you have to meet some incredibly specific conditions for restricted maneuverability to actually be an advantage to you. And let's just be real, under most combat scenarios that's not likely to be the case, unless you have specifically tailored your environment to be able to be advantageous to you. In other words, set up an ambush. But those sort of strategic circumstantial details are not something that we are able to 100% predict for every potential scenario. So all of that considered, how does that tie back into stealth? Assuming that we are dealing in a slightly more open area, chances are any combat that he encounters is also going to be in a cave, which implies that in all likelihood the ground is probably going to be either dirt or rock, which means that the wooden shoes are going to have clunking noises in some way, shape or form. Once again, because we're dealing with a magical creature, unless he's got some sort of a skill that can nullify that sound, which we don't know about, you're gonna hear him. You're gonna hear him moving. One way or another. But having night vision in dark spaces is also going to count in his stealth advantage as well, because unless the opponent somehow has a method of lighting up the room, not being able to see in a cavernous environment with a lot of reflective surfaces where sound can bounce around and sound like they're coming from everywhere at once, it might actually work as a confusion tool. So even though it's not 100% quiet, it would still actually serve a little bit of a functional purpose. It reminds me of a line that I read in a Terry Pratchett book once, now that I think about it. I can't remember which one it was. If anyone can tell me if they recognize it, if you have read Terry Pratchett's Discworld novels, it would be lovely if you can remind me which one I'm thinking about, because I honestly cannot remember. But there was an assassin character who, during a paragraph in this novel, it was written something along the lines of, being perfectly silent is not the answer to being stealthy. And I'm not sure that I'm quoting this 100% accurately, so take this with a pinch of salt. Being 100% silent is not necessarily the answer to being stealthy. People tend to notice patches of moving silence. So, that is also potentially something that could actually be working in the advantage if we've got these wooden clog shoes. If their shape is just so on the sole, because I can't really get a good read on what the sole of the shoe's construction looks like. But there is a very, very high acoustic likelihood that these shoes might be shaped in such a way that the sound of a footfall using them may actually sound very similar to the sound of plopping water droplets. Think about it. If the sound of the footfalls sounds like dripping water, you're not going to assume that it is an opponent. And that, in a highly resonant acoustic chamber, like what you would get inside a cave, that is going to conceal you so easily because you can't see if there is actually dripping water in that room unless you've lit the place up. So I would actually dare say that provided that the acoustic properties of those shoes is such that you could get that sort of effect, not entirely dissimilar from the effect that I get out of this little plastic pipe against my hand here. If you can imagine a similar sort of effect from a wooden shoe making where that's got the right shape, impacting against a stone floor, I would dare say that you could actually hide your presence really easily. Because it's not a patch of moving silence that people can notice. Actual sounds, yeah, actual sounds. Actual sounds adding to your stealth score. Like, I dare say put stealth on like a 9, because there is actually a lot in his advantage here. I wasn't expecting auditory illustration. Yeah, no, I just happened to have that tool right nearby. It was the handle from a exercise resistance band that had broken. And I was messing around with this pair of scavenged handles because I realized, hold up, these could be useful for Foley for things. So I decided to keep them, and while fiddling around with them, as I found out, oh, these sound exactly like dripping water. I have to keep these. I have to keep these for my Foley. If I ever need to have dripping water sounds for Foley for something. Because you never know, right? But yeah, I would actually dare say that given environmental properties of the arena in which he finds himself under normal circumstances, I would actually dare say that the stealth score would be pretty high. And even if he finds himself not in that sort of advantageous environment, nothing's stopping him from kicking off the shoes and going barefoot, because he's barefoot inside those clogs. There are no socks. Which means that your barefoot stealth is also quite high as well. Like, if you are absolutely 100% forced to abandon your shoes for stealth purposes, he would be able to get away with it. He would 100% be able to get away with it. Now we're running a little bit over time on this one, so I'm just going to quickly hurry this one up a little bit. Weapons and ammunition, we have none. Like, unless you take off a wooden clock and throw it. And he's only got 2 of those. So weapons and ammunition I'm going to put on a score of 1 because he's not carrying enough to actually have anything on that line. Like, he might have the chunkler advantage, but that's about where it ends. Maybe the 2 rings at the end of his tail. I don't see the rings on his antlers coming off very easily. So, weapons and ammunition is like 1. And gear reliance, I'm also going to put at like a 0 or a 1 as well, because he has claws. Like, if you've got a powerful swing and a pair of claws and antlers that can gouge out an eyeball, how and you're working in melee range, how much other weaponry do you actually need? How much other weaponry do you actually need? his design says I don't actually need tools of any description to be able to protect myself. There is a level of implied self-assurance here, so I'm going to put reliance at a 1 as well. And there we go. That is Marius Ajaxson. Thank you so much, Mari, for your submission. It was really, really fun. You had a lot of interesting points to discuss. We went overtime with you. I am so sorry. But it was a lot of fun. So thank you. Thank you. I will send you your radar graph towards the end of the day. Okay. Number next. Let us switch through. Our next one is gonna be Alger. I hope I am pronouncing that right. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. So next is Alger Elkis, Goddess of Extinction. Okay. Let's have a look, see what we've got. There is a goat emoji here. So I suppose if we look at any species perk implications, we need to assume something more caprine in nature. But let's have a look, see at what we've got on our species perks. Let me just increase this, because dynamic range is definitely a thing here that we've got to do. Balance with. Okay, like that should do the trick. Okay, you should be able to see stuff there. And I'm just gonna shuffle a little bit more this way. There we go. Okay, so Alger Elkis. I think now is a good time to reset our hydrate timer, because that gives us a good indication of how long a half an hour is for each person. There we go. Did we have a hydrate? I think we did. I think we did, right? Anyway. Let's have a look at species perk. We, as far as we can tell, based on the provided illustrations, have entirely human anatomy. I'm not seeing anything in the anatomy that is non-human. I think a little bit before ending that last one. Yeah. Yeah. I think we hydrated basically not long after the bell actually went off. But yeah, okay, I'm not seeing much in terms of anatomical obvious species perks here. Like, her build is very, very, very much human. I've only got 2 images to toggle between here. So I can't think of anything anatomically that would come to, that would be a species perk advantage in a fight here. So I have to put that one at a 0 because there's nothing immediately obvious on species perk that can be utilized while I'm looking at this. What she has got going for her is durability, because she has got armor. And a decent amount of it. So all of the Major vital areas are protected. We've got the full torso armament going on here, including tassets and a codpiece, and what looks like palanes on the knees as well. So we've definitely got some armament going on. The pauldrons are covering the entire upper arm as well. I can't tell what sort of material the arm coverings are. It might be, looking at the shininess here, it might be silk, which has got significant strength qualities about it. So that might be an interesting material choice. Very difficult to pierce a silk piece of fabric without getting in between the weave. So her armor class I've immediately got to put quite high. I can't see if this armor is also going to translate into greaves and sabatons on the legs. I don't know if that's just an artistic decision to not define that, or if it is implied that these are just normal boots. I can't tell. But I think based on the fact that we have a decent amount of armor, the only area that I'd say, the only areas that I'd say are particularly vulnerable around the torso are the throat and the armpit areas, which are the only two vital points on the torso that are still exposed here. Armpits obviously potentially being covered by the fact that we're assuming that this is a anti-abrasive fabric of some description, which we can only also assume the fabric around the neck is. I'm assuming that this area around the neck is fabric because I'm not seeing the separations of panels that one would need for this to be a gorget, which is your throat armor. So obviously with the exposed head, it's not going to be a full 10 points. And with the exposed asterisk exposed throat and armpit, I also can't make that probably higher than let's be reasonable. Let's be reasonable. I'm gonna put this durability armor class at a 7. Because this is a lot of armor, but there are some spots that are still quite exposed and unprotected. There are definitely still some unprotected areas. But definitely one of the higher armor classes that we have seen in our run of things. Then our next point is gonna be maneuverability. Now, while she has got a lot of armor, this is definitely going to be one of the more maneuverable armor sets that we're going to encounter as well, because if we look at her joints, they are unobstructed, right? So with this particular construction of the tassets, the codpiece, her area around her waist, her legs have pretty much got free reign of movement inside those leggings. Whatever material those leggings are made out of. Those legs can move any which way they need to move. There's going to be practically no restriction on those. And there's nothing around the backs of the knees or around the elbows which could also inhibit the absolute most closed range of movement on those two joints as well. So that is a major plus point in that case. What I am not seeing, which might be a little bit of an inhibiting factor, is I'm not seeing anything that is connecting the lower end of the pauldron onto the upper arm. So it looks like that might actually be a separate and loose piece, which, while that might be decent for lower range of movement maneuverability, in other words, while the arms are down and closer tucked towards the torso area, it shouldn't get in the way. As soon as you need to raise your arm, that is potentially going to be an issue. I also can't see how these pauldrons are attached to the top of the breastplate here as well. So we don't know how much that is going to actually be able to slide and rotate, so that as the arm gets raised, that top plate between the corner of the deltoid over here and the nook of the neck, we don't know how much that's going to be able to actually maneuver and rotate so that it doesn't kind of get jammed in there and stop the arm kind of part way up the raising level. So like if the arm can't raise more than, if we assume that T-pose is a 90-degree angle, if it can't raise more than, like, what does that translate to? Where is that thing? Hello, you were on my desk just now. You were on my desk just now. Where did you go? Ah, here you are. Okay. Yeah, if it's not going to be able to raise more than like 120 degrees upwards, that's going to be a little bit of a limit on maneuverability, depending on how it pivots. We can't tell. So that I'm going to probably be mindful of. And then we've got the condition of the cape and the loose, long hair. Now, these two things, while aesthetically incredibly pleasing, they have an amazing amount of limitations that they place on your ability to maneuver. Ask anyone who has really, really long hair and they will tell you it gets stuck in everything. It gets stuck in absolutely everything. Like, you think about a zipper on a backpack, or even if you have it pulled in front of you and it gets caught in buttons or in whatever, it gets caught everywhere and it's heavy. It's really, really heavy. So those are going to be things that are going to be a bit of a mobility limitation factor as well. And I actually also dare say a major risk, because it's something that can be grabbed and used against you very, very easily. So while it's aesthetically amazingly pleasing, it's an incredibly, incredibly risky thing to have long hair on a battlefield, and especially loose long hair on a battlefield. Because it's going to get caught in stuff, your armor, your weapons, your opponent, their grip, potentially, in which case, yank, pull, oops, you've lost your balance, / ooh, there you've lost your hand or your head or something else. It's dangerous. It's really, really dangerous. So it's aesthetically very pleasing, but incredibly, incredibly dangerous on a maneuverability front. And the same goes for the cape. Like, we all hear the designer lady saying, "No capes!" We all hear it. We all hear it. And then you roll over because it gets caught in the leg piece. Exactly. It gets really, really, really difficult to maneuver when you've got dangly things that get caught in stuff. dangly things that get caught and stuff generally make stuff hard to move. And they obstruct your line of sight as well. Sometimes, especially when you are doing big sweeping maneuvers, the drag of gravity pulling this huge long drapey thing behind you, sometimes it's going to end up back in front of your face. It is going to end up back in front of your face, and you're not going to be able to plan your next maneuver that easily afterwards. So that's going to be a downward point on the maneuverability score. So if we look at everything combined in that scenario, I am going to have to say I can't put the maneuverability at higher than a 6. We haven't got anything that on the limb side is going to be a major issue, but between the hair, the cape, and the fact that we don't know how high you'd be able to raise your arm without, if you can't touch your shoulder to your ear without moving your head, then probably your shoulder armor is in the way. And we also can't tell if it is actually attached to her upper arm as well, which means that that can also flop into her face potentially if she raises her arm too much as well. So another thing that could potentially be an issue. So maneuverability, I can't give it higher than a 6, despite the fact that around the joints generally it seems to be pretty good. It looks like she's got flat bottom boots as well, which as far as being able to cover terrain of varying degrees of how shall I put this? Ruggedness. Having a flat sole boot is actually not bad. Anything with a bit of a heel is generally more useful when you need to shove your foot into a stirrup. Or a platform is useful when you're going over marshes and things. But if we are assuming a battlefield where you need to have the full flexibility of your foot, because this is very much armor that implies she's going to be out on the battlefields, right? In those situations, you want the full flexibility of your foot on the ground to be able to pivot in interesting ways. And on that front, the maneuverability is a huge thing. Yeah, exactly. The Edna mode, no capes! Yes, exactly. So, maneuverability, 6. I can't give her anything higher than that. Brute force. In terms of the artwork that we see, we don't have any indication of weaponry. What we do know is that according to lore one-liner that is in her profile, Goddess of Extinction, that generally means that by definition she wipes stuff out. That is like by definition what she does, right? And that is going to take some brute force. Let's just be real. How she achieves that, we don't know. Maybe it's a magical thing. Magical brute force is a thing as well. Because according to her build, while we do see an athletic build, we don't know what the musculature underlying looks like. And when you are an ethereal being, one sometimes wonders how much musculature actually counts. So I'm gonna say, considering what her lore aspect points at, the brute force is gonna need to be relatively high. But because of her build, I can't put it all the way up there. But I'm gonna put it on an 8. Because given what she is meant to embody, yeah, you're not gonna make things extinct if you don't have the power to actually do the wiping out. So that's just a logical conclusion on that front. We don't see any weaponry or anything, but I also sometimes wonder, would she need it? If she is extinction personified. Does she need any supplements in order to cause that extinction? Those are the questions that one must ask. Which puts us on the question of range. Now, we have based her brute force on the assumption that being an ethereal being, there is magic involved, which probably means that there is going to be some level of magical range involved as well, but we've got no indication of what it looks like. Hold on. This thing here with the rose at the end looks like it might actually be a sword. It might be one of those wavy swords, which does put her more in melee range. What are those wavy swords called again? That's annoying me that I can't remember right this very moment. Oh man, that's annoying when you can't remember the name of a weapon that you see. Anyway. I heard supplements and thought vitamin C. Well, she's going to be vitamin E for extinction, honestly. So yeah, she does actually have the sword now that I look at the second illustration. And being a swordsman does take quite a bit of effort. It's annoying me that I can't remember what the name of this weapon is. Hold up. Flamberge, of course, flamberge. Enhanced cutting. Improved parrying. Okay. So yeah, that's a lot of cutting surface. So it's sort of like the undulating, hyper large version of a serration, almost, you could say. So it's going to be very effective at cutting, and like we just saw in the other thing, parrying as well, because you can actually kind of hook another weapon in the waves of the blade. That's kind of useful. It's kind of really, really useful. And being able to kind of use one of those waves, if you've caught an opposing weapon in one of those waves, it's easier to deflect it with a flick of the arm and wrist than if you had a straight edge blade where it can still slide along the length. So that I can definitely see the advantage of that. It does put her strongly in melee range though, without any indication of what kind of magic she might be wielding. So I'm going to have to put the range at 5 for now, because magic range is implied, but we don't know what it looks like. At the moment, we can see that there is melee action going on. But we don't know what it looks like in terms of potential magic range. Okay. Next is adaptability. Now, on that front, her armor is pretty much an all-rounder design, because it's got enough maneuverability to be able to move swiftly. It has coverings on all of the major vital areas that one is most likely to take a hit on, with the exception of the forearms as well. So in terms of overall adaptability, she has got those two things on her side. Her choice of weapon, the flamberge, is also a really good adaptable weapon. Like we just read, it's for the slicing, it's for the parrying. It's really, really useful. It gives you a lot of options there. the cape and the long hair and the potential for obstructing vision and getting caught and stuff is going to be a little bit of a detriment to that adaptability, because one needs to be mindful of how you move to not get your hair and cape caught in stuff. So those are going to definitely have an impact on how one's choices of locomotion are going to be executed. The functional purpose of the glasses might be interesting. Because obviously they are not going to be goggles, so they're not going to really do much in terms of protecting the eyes from any angle sort of ordnance that might explode in her face. However, it has been known that wearing sunglasses can protect you from a spitting cobra. So maybe at least on a direct frontal spraying attack of some description, her eyes might be a little bit protected from that temporarily. Additional thing for her hair to get caught on. Yes, her glasses. So yeah, I'm gonna have to, assuming that she is prepared for all other circumstances and has magic on her side, I can't put her on adaptability at a higher than a 7 because there's just too much that she's got to be mindful of with her hair and her cape. It's gonna get in the way. Like, aside from that, she's got a really hyper-adaptable armor set. She's got enough to be able to tank through a couple of blows while still being lightweight enough to be a hyper-speed and maneuverability type. So she's got the general all-rounder stuff going on for her. It's just that she's got to be mindful of how she moves with her hair and her cape. And her sword design is also pretty decent. We can't see the tip, so we can't see exactly how narrow it is for its stabbing potential on that sword design. But the flamberges that I have seen have all had quite a decent taper towards a relatively good stabbing end. So even though it's pretty good at slicing, it's really good at getting in between links and mail armor as well. So there you've got that little advantage going on there. So she's gonna have a pretty high adaptability score by my reckoning. And then the next thing that we need to look at is gonna be her adaptability. No, we just finished adaptability. Next is magic. Okay, so her blurb says Goddess of Extinction, right? That implies some significant ethereal force behind that. Like, it implies significant ethereal force behind it. Not omnipotent ethereal force, because as soon as you've got a designation of what you have control over, it means that you've got a limitation of literally everything else. Literally everything else. But it means that when you are ranked as a god, or a god tier kind of entity, then by inference the magic level is pretty high, so that's definitely going to be a 9. Just by inference of the title there. Unless it's just a title. Like, we've seen historically a lot of people get very, very, very high level titles, even though they are in fact mortals. We don't know. We're just dealing with VTubers, and they can be literally everything, she says, when she is literally an alien bird. So we're just going to imagine that she's not just citing a title, but she is in fact an aspected ethereal entity in that regard. So yeah, we're gonna assume high levels of magic. Next is our favorite, the stealth score. Okay, so Armor, by default, is going to have a little bit of chinking and jingling going on here. Because there are hard pieces that are going to clank into one another. Our indication of what materials are in play is a little bit limited, but we have to assume that it's some degree of metal based on the shading. We have to assume that the trim on all of this is metal, which means that there's probably going to be some clinking of the armor as she moves. Just a little bit, right? So the jingle test, sadly, she does not pass the jingle test on that front. She doesn't have other accessories or anything that can clank into stuff as she moves around. So that's a positive. But she's definitely going to have the armor clanking sounds as she moves a bit. Especially, I think, around the tassets and codpiece area. That is definitely going to have more of it because of the way that things are going to overlap. Especially while walking. Because as you stride, there's going to be... the forward leg is going to impact both the tacet and the codpiece, so those two are going to clank together, while the backward leg is going to create a space before the next impact as it swings forward. So that's definitely going to have an impact noise while moving. Definitely the fabric swishing of the cape. If there is any sort of wind in the area, it's going to sound like a flogging sail, so it's going to be loud. It's actually going to be quite loud. And the friction sounds of the hair against that as well, also, you're going to notice it a little bit. We can't tell what material the underside of these shoes are, if there are sabotons involved or not. We can't tell based on our view and rendering style, so we can't really tell how quiet those are going to be in contact with the ground. But then again, we also can't tell how in contact with the ground she's going to be. So, yeah. There. A sail? Yeah. Yeah. I have intimate familiarity with how loud sails can be. It gets loud. It gets loud. Anyway. So I think on a stealth level, we can't put her at higher than a 5. Like, she hasn't got all of the bells and jingles like that. She's not got an outfit that's going to specifically intentionally make noise. But she's definitely got enough pieces on her that are going to reduce her stealth capability. Good timing, timer. Exactly. Now imagining her in T-pose on top of a ship. Yep. We can all see it. I am a sail. T-posing for the square rigger. Anyway. Next is going to be weapons and ammunition. The only weapon that we can see is her sword. It's a very nice sword. It's a very, very nice sword. But it is only one. It is only one. So as far as ammunition goes, we can't put anything on that point. But it is a very, very versatile weapon, so I'm going to have to put that on a 4, I think. This may or may not be a Master Chief situation. I will pretend to understand what you mean by that. I'm pretty sure everyone else will. I haven't played the game, I'm sorry. I don't know the lore. I'm sorry. Okay. And lastly, we have Gear Alliance. We see she's got a high magic score and a relatively low weapons and ammunition score. I think also being ethereal being, the armor is more for the aesthetics than for practicality, probably. So probably over everything else, the Gear Alliance is going to be pretty low. I'm going to put that, like, at a 2, because we don't know what she might be fighting against. We don't know what she might be fighting against, essentially, in a combat scenario. But, like, she has the sword, which is nice, and she's got the armor, which is nice. Maybe a 3. Maybe a 3 is more reasonable. It's helpful. But she is an ethereal being. Would she be able to still cause extinction without her sword and her armor? Who knows? Who knows? With her high magic rating, there is a high likelihood that she would be able to still fulfill the function of her designation even without her sword and her armor. So I'm gonna leave that at a 3. And there we go! That is a completed radar graph for Alja Alkis. There we go. Inhale, the Master Chief is given the moniker of the demon by his enemies despite being a human. Exactly. I was mentioning that a little bit earlier, that sometimes you get very high and mighty titles that sound very impressive but are still applied to a mortal being. We don't know. In the case of her lore proper, but we are dealing with VTubers here, so we're going to assume that we are dealing with definitions, not granted titles. Like, for me, Sentinel is a title, Avian Alien is the description, right? Alien as a title would be kind of weird. If that makes sense. Sentinel is definitely the title, though. So, yeah, with VTubers, we have to assume, basically, that any descriptions that they give of themselves are their actual definition. Unless we are given enough lore to make a distinction to the contrary. Especially considering how many ethereal beings exist in the VTuber space. Like, we've got a lot of ethereal beings in the VTuber space. But okay. I think that is that for Alja. Let's all take our hydrate. So everyone acquire your nearest safe for consumption beverage. And let's take a sip. Okay. Who is next? Who is next? I will be giving you your radar graph after stream. Thank you so much for your participation. Woohoo! Okay. Next is Todd Blackburn. Okay. We have absolutely no lore to work off of. Okay. No lore whatsoever to work off of. Just picture. No lore, just picture. Okay. Let's do this. Let's go with that. And see what we have to deal with. I'm just gonna have another sip of water because, oh my word, that was not enough. And our timer for the number next. There we go. So, What have we got here? I am seeing what looks like entirely humanoid, with no clear species perks. We've got no law to say anything other than human to work off of. Therefore, we are going to have to put the species perk score on a 0 because we can't see anything on that front. The next thing that we're going to look at is going to be our durability. Now, on that case, it does look like this is a little bit of a bodysuit sort of a setup with some distinct armor plating in key areas. So, what I am seeing is I'm seeing a bit of protection around the deltoids for sure. We have our first gorget, actual dedicated throat armor. Nice, nice. I am seeing what looks like a bit of extra plating here by the elbow. I think it's a little bit tricky to see with the lighting, but it looks like it might be a little bit of extra plating here by the elbow. I'm seeing what looks like creases and palanes on the legs. So thighs are protected, knees are protected. It's a little bit challenging to see what's happening on the lower leg. It's a little bit very challenging to see what's happening on the lower leg, but I'm seeing a lot of protection in all of the key places that one would need when maneuvering. I can't tell if these plates that we're seeing on the torso here are actual armor or if it's just the cut of a shirt. With different textures that we might be seeing. It's difficult to tell. So I think as far as our durability rating, we have to anticipate that, okay, it's definitely not going to be a 10 because we're not dealing with someone with natural armor. Of any description. Head is unprotected, so that's going to take us down to a 9. In general, we've got all of the major areas that would be vulnerable to minor abrasions covered, because literally everything from the throat down is covered. There is no exposed skin that is going to be vulnerable to minor abrasions or chemical spills or whatever have you. So that's pretty decent. The gorget is good. The shoulder protection is good. I am a little bit concerned about what looks like thin fabric here by the sternum and the solar plexus area. That is a major soft spot because it's like basically right here is the top of the arch of the front of the rib cage, and right under there is like one of the major weak soft spots. That's where you punch if you want to wind someone. So that area being exposed, I am a little bit concerned that if he takes any hits there, he is going to have broken sternum immediately major lung damage from that if he takes any blunt force trauma there, because that is unguarded. Whereas all of his joints are pretty well protected. It does mean that he's got more flexibility though than certain other breastplates that we've seen floating around, because there is full flex to be able to kind of get your shoulders as far forward as they can possibly go. But assuming that the material that this shirt and jacket and bodysuit setup is made out of has at least some degree of durability, we're going to assume that this is actually pretty decent. There is fabric in some key places, so I'm going to put our durability score at like a 7. I'm going to put it on a 6. Because we gave Arbiter a 7 and he was fully armored, basically. Todd, we can see a lot of good protection, but the fabric around the sternum does raise some serious concerns on that front. Next, maneuverability. I see nothing that would be an immediate inhibitor to maneuverability. Like immediate. Hair might get in the eyes a little bit. The anti-gravity collar might obscure vision a little bit. And the tails of this coat might wrap around the legs a little bit, depending on how heavily the wind is blowing. Those are the three things that I'm immediately concerned by. Armor on the jacket doesn't look too tight. There seems to be enough give around the elbows for that to be able to close up completely without digging in uncomfortable ways and shapes. I can't see exactly what's happening around the boots and the legs area, but it looks like it's pretty solidly on his legs, so nothing is in danger of falling off. And it looks like we've got a relatively flat sole scenario as well. Which ought to give him... Oh, relatively flat sole, but with grip. I'm seeing what looks like grip. So I don't know, I can't tell how thick the soles are, but I can tell that they're going to definitely have a little bit of extra bite on interesting terrain. It's going to make swiveling on a tile a little bit harder if you're swiveling on your toe. But if you're like pushing against someone in a grapple or a weapon lock, I can imagine it being a pretty useful thing. So maneuverability is pretty good so far. I'm not able to tell 100% if we're just seeing on torso area interesting shapes of lighting on armor and on the cut of the shirt, or if we're actually seeing abdominal musculature detail. I can't really 100% tell. But based on the pectorals, I am going to assume that there is a fairly athletic build under here. Definitely of the lithe type. So comparably, I am going to put this around about a 7, because the only major issue I can imagine is that the is a line of sight thing with his hair and the tails getting in his the tails of his coat getting wrapped up in his legs. But beyond that, he looks quite flexible. And probably able to maneuver in a melee situation relatively easily. The next thing is gonna be brute force. Now, once again, he's got a lithe build. So we don't have enough information to assume how heavy a hitter he's actually going to be underneath all of that. What we do get a sense of immediately is a relatively high magic score. Like, I am anticipating a relatively high magic score because this orb in his hands, it looks like it's blue fire, and it looks like there are these orbiting spheres around that, which implies some sort of magical core element with bits that imply extra manipulation of some description. And the entire aura vibe floating around him, the magical flicks, the background stylization, it implies a lot of magic of some description. So I have to probably assume that whatever his magic is, there is, based on the fire type look of that core, I'm going to assume that it's also going to be fire aspected in some way, shape, or form. And those tend to be kind of destructive. Like, just a itty bitty little bit destructive. So, I can't say with full certainty what kind of destructive capabilities we've got, because we've got no lore to work off of. So I'm going to put this on a 6. Because the magic looks like it would have some significant offensive capability, based on what we can see around the aura and that core that he's holding. Next thing is going to be range. I don't see any melee weapons on him at all. But given that this magic core that he's got has got these floating things around it, I am willing to bet that any magical skills that he has have got a telekinetic aspect to them, and he's going to be a ranged mage of some description. Like, that's the sense I get, is some sort of ranged mage. Which I am going to have to assume is going to put us on the higher end of the range level. We haven't got any sense of the actual power scaling that we're dealing with, so while an interplanetary would be like a 10, or blowing up the nearest moon type of thing would be a 10 in terms of range. It's actually harder to think these without any write-up. It is significantly, because you've only got visual cues to work with. So I'm gonna have to I'm gonna put the range at 8 at the moment, because I'm sensing a very, very strong telekinetic aspecting with those floating cores around that magic thing that he's holding. But I can't tell 100%. Actually, I'm going to pull that down to a 6, because we don't know if that's going to be arrow range or if it's going to be sniper rifle range. So I'm going to put that on a 6. Range 8 can attempt to blow up the moon, but not quite. Yes, yes. Like, if we think back to when we were working with Eldritch Horror of Bread, he was literally an interplanetary entity, guys. He was going to be full range of 10. Okay, so 6 moon explosion, dreams very much gone. Yes, because we've got no idea what the scaling is. It could be bow and arrow range, it could be sniper rifle range, it could be ICBM range, we just don't know. ICBM would be like an 8 or a 9. How many times can this piece of magic circle the planet before making impact? But yeah. Let us move along. The next thing is gonna be our adaptability score. So, this definitely looks like a relatively high maneuverability, and actually kind of really balanced between maneuverability and brute force. Like, so far, everything has been kind of all in the same range. Of medium-high ranges on all of our scores so far, with the exception of the species perk, which was at a 0. So that implies, by nature of everything being on a very close grouping in terms of score range, we're dealing with another all-rounder here. In their defense, I don't remember the original post asking for a blurb, and when a post says rank blank based on design, they normally ask for 0 context. This is true. So I won't absolutely not hold them against them. Some people offered stuff by themselves, something extra to go by, but we've also, under normal circumstances, people, when they have a specific motif, they will put that in their profile in some way, shape or form, and that is not the case in this particular instance. So we know that this is just a character belonging to a person, but we actually have no context if this is even a streamer's character. Like, we don't know if this is a VTuber avatar or not. We don't know if this is a VTuber avatar or just an OC. We don't know. It was targeted at VTubers, but it may or may not be, strictly. So, I have learned a couple of things between making the original post in September and now about this. So, hence why the reanalysis fight is a little bit more open for add a little bit of blurb so that we've got context to work with on the hashtag now. At some point I'm going to definitely need to make a short of some description to actually break down reanalysis fight in a little bit more detail so that people can have a better idea of what and how to submit. I'll need to script something out for that. I'm a bit looking forward to it. But anyway, we digress. So yeah, adaptability. Overall, we're getting all of the marks of an all-rounder. I would potentially be a little bit concerned about if he finds himself with an opponent who is within melee range, because I'm not seeing especially high defenses on his immediate person. We can see that, okay, he should be able to handle a couple of incidental hits. But like I do have concerns that if someone had to get like super close, so it's definitely, unless he's got an ability to put up some sort of shield with his magic as well, I'm a little bit concerned about someone in melee range. But aside from that, he actually seems like he's going to have quite a lot of adaptability to go with. He doesn't seem like he's going to rely on a lot of gear to be able to get by. So, I was severely underestimated by another creator when they ranked people based on their design and how they'd fare in a fight. They said, oh, they have feathers, they're easy prey. Oh, my word, that is... no. Gestures broadly at every airborne apex predator ever. But anyway. Yeah. No. I would actually venture to say that feathered wings are more durable than membranous ones, if we're going strictly on biology. Anyway. But anyway, so I'm going to give this guy a pretty high adaptability score. I can't imagine that he's going to make use of tools very much. Probably if he's going to find himself in a combat scenario, he's going to rely more on his magic. I don't know what limitations they might exist for it. Potentially he might use some sort of telekinetic ability on objects in the vicinity to also potentially aid him. So, for lack of more information, I'm going to put adaptability on 5. For lack of more information. He seems like he's going to be an all-rounder. But without seeing options for, okay, what happens if magic runs out in some way, shape or form, it's difficult to give him a higher rank than that. Magic, we can see there is definitely magic. The entire atmosphere of the piece implies a fairly large amount of it. even though it's condensed currently into a core in his hand. The floaties and the general aura around him, all of that, I am going to err on the side of he's probably got a lot of this magic skill. So I'm gonna put that on like a 8. And that puts us on to the next point, which is stealth. Okay. So, does he pass the jingle test? Does he pass the jingle test? I don't see any hard accessories hanging off of him. I don't see zipper closures on his jacket of any description. I don't see armor that can clank about. And thus, he passes the jingle test. Ding ding ding, we have a winner! We have passed the jingle test. Hello. Okay. That is good, that is good, that is good. Literally the only thing I can think of here is that he'll have some fabric rustling against the back of his head as he moves his head around in this anti-gravity collar, and the potential wind flaps of air through the tails of his coat. That is the only things I can think of that would immediately make obvious noise. Jingle test passer, woohoo! They thought I was a bird or an angel. The person specifically asked for no context. Now I've squat about my lore and my bio, so the reaction was funny. You know, fair. But yeah. Okay, so we've got a jingle test passer. The fabric flogging is going to be a little bit of a thing with the tail of the coat, and the fabric rustling around the back of his head with this anti-gravity collar. I can't really tell if the trim on his jacket would maybe have any clanking noises against something on his chest here. It's the spacing on it doesn't look like that would be an issue. And I also can't tell how hard the soles of his shoes would be. But literally, as far as our stealth goes, I can't actually fault him very much. I'm going to put him all the way on a 9. I have to give him a really high stealth score because he's got one of the most quiet-looking outfits we have seen. Like, one of the most quiet-looking outfits we have seen. Solidly. And that is before assuming any sort of sound suppression magic. So, yeah. We've got a good one going there. Next is weapons and ammunition. We have no indications of either. We have no indications of either weapon or ammunition. So that one I'm going to put on a 0. Because we've got literally nothing on that one. And gear reliance? Well, based on the fact that he's got some armor, and some sort of physical protection, we're going to have to assume that he is going to probably need it at some point. Or at least once that contingency while maneuvering. But as far as offensive capacity goes, I don't think he actually needs any gear for his ability to do whatever he needs to do in combat, based off of the rest of it. So I'm probably going to put the gear alliance on like a let's put this on a 2, because he obviously has prepared for a couple of potential eventualities in terms of locomotive impact more than anything else. We can't tell if the bodysuit has additional functions, maybe. We just don't know. Maybe we should dial that up to a 3, because we don't know if the bodysuit has additional functionality. Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one. Sure. Okay. So this is maybe going to be one of the more difficult radar graphs to read because we've got that one surrounded by zeros. We've got that one gear alliance thing that's surrounded by zeros, so that little dotted line might be a little bit tricky to see, but it is there. It is there. Thank you very, very much, Todd Blackburn, for your submission. I shall be sending you your radar graph and your timestamp after stream. Thank you very, very much for joining in and for your patience. Woohoo! Okay, and we've actually got 5 minutes left on our timer on this one, which is interesting. I think that has to do a lot with the amount of information we had to infer without actually having anything really strong to go on. But overall, I think this is a really good all-round character design as far as combat capacity looks like. I would 100% expect this sort of outfit to work in a Magitech inspired action manhwa. Honestly, I 100% expect it to work there. It's got that sort of protagonist energy. So nice, very, very nice. While we are waiting the last 4 minutes for the hydrate timer to go off, I am going to top up on my hydrates because actually I finished my water in the last one. So I will be... yeah, manhwa specifically. Manhwa very specifically. It just reads it 100% in that vein. I wouldn't say manga necessarily in terms of the styling on those usually. But like, I can totally see that being a thing. So I'm just going to go on BRB to top up my water and actually make myself another cup of coffee. I will be very, very quick because there's boiling water in a flask that's got my name on it, so probably only 2 minutes. If I'm not back before the timer goes off in 3 minutes time, well, too bad. It will not be long. It will not be long. Okay, sure. I shall see you shortly, and then we will continue with the next one, which is a rodeo clown. Hello. That's going to be an interesting one. Okay. See you shortly. And we're back. And it looks like I was back just after the timer went off. Okay. Okay, we're back. And, here we go. Alright, so, let us reset for number next, which is Jolly Joe Bean. Welcome back, thank you! Alright, and let us all hydrate accordingly. Coffee! Fresh, warm coffee, yay! Enjoy it while it's hot! Ooh, the snötrus. Oh wow! Whew! Yeah, that's now nice. That's now very nice. Okay, we are back. We are back. All right. Clown, yes, we have Jolly Joe Bean, the rodeo clown. I will be very, very honest. I have very limited familiarity with rodeo. Like, significantly limited familiarity with rodeo. It's not a thing in Misthaven, okay? What I do know is that it is very much a show of how can I phrase this? How can I phrase this that doesn't sound hopeless in some way? It's supposed to be a cowboy show, honestly. I don't know how else to describe it. I was expecting fear of clowns, not lack of rodeo experience. Look, clowns IRL, I do have my hesitations. But clowns in general are masters of spatial maneuvering. This is also very true. This is also very true. I'm just trying to think, because he's specifying rodeo clown, it is a area that I do not have a high level of familiarity in. So what the exact expectations would be are limited. I do know that because of the general cowboy vibe, there is going to be interactions with horses and bovines of varying descriptions. And I would anticipate, therefore, and I'm just extrapolating here because I've never seen a rodeo, not even a video of a rodeo, really, outside of the movies, which is limited on the best of days. I would anticipate, therefore, and please correct me, anyone here who has actually seen a rodeo, therefore that a rodeo clown would be someone who has an entertainment function in the rodeo, with these interactions with these large animals, and as clowns do, generally consists of making themselves look like they're in danger while actually being in control of a situation. I feel like that's sort of what the job description would basically be. I am not 100% sure. Please correct me if I am wrong. Because understanding the job description, when one is looking at how to define aspects according to said job description, it's very important. Because everything exists within its own context, right? It would be very, very strange to compare the capacities of a rodeo clown versus a ring circus clown that would not potentially interact with large animals. It's not much different from normal clown's aesthetic and getting chased by bulls. Okay. Yeah. And I feel like normal clowns generally don't go into as much danger under normal circumstances. Big heavy animals with hooves that kick. Yeah. Yes-ish, they are in control, but only as much control as you can get against any ranged animal. Yeah, that's what that was the sort of feeling I was getting. That's like there needs to be a significant amount of situational awareness and habitual familiarity with what to expect out of an animal of the certain nature to be able to do your job mostly safely, or as safely as you can within the limitations of, oh shucks, this thing is literally rampaging. I don't think rodeo clowns do the clown car bit though. You know what? Probably. Then again, I suppose that the definition of clown can vary quite significantly depending on the context of the clown, right? From what I know, the rodeo clowns are there to distract the angry animals so they don't harm the riders when they get knocked off. That actually that's a very good, that's a good point. It's like, okay, so you are literally the diversions. Okay. So that... I'm just going to do a quick search on this because I want to make sure that I have not got a wrong job description under which I am doing... under which I'm doing this assessment. Rodeo clown videos watch along? Not quite. I'm just quickly doing a article read up. Okay. So it's basically a combination of what we have discussed so far, by the looks of things. So, entertainment, showmanship, and safety personnel. That's basically the job description. Entertainment and safety personnel. Okay, cool. Now we've got context in which to work and fully operate. While I have been to the rodeo several times, I've not seen an actual show, so my knowledge is also limited. Okay, that's fair. Okay, let us see. Then let us start our timer and actually get into the analysis for this one. Alright, so Jolly Joe Bean, rodeo clown VTuber. Let's see how this is going to break down. So, on species perk, we are dealing with an actual straight up human, okay? But courtesy job description, we know that a significantly high level baseline fitness is implied because you're literally safety personnel here. So, species perk, I'm going to, much like Stale Toaster, I am going to put him on a 1 because a baseline level of physical aptitude higher than a standard human is implied simply by the job description. I can't say that I see anything on what we can see of his model that implies any particularly high protection rating. Like, jeans are pretty good for stopping the road rash, right? Not the most durable thing under the sun to tumble around on the dirt with, but definitely better than lesser fabrics. So while he's in normal, for all practical purposes, clothing, I would have to put probably a protection rating of... we'll have to make an executive decision on this because we can't see actually what his footwear looks like. But I would probably also assume that he's going to probably be wearing pretty good shoes. Possibly with steel toes in case an animal decides to step on him. You know, that's entirely possible. So I'm probably gonna give him an armor rating of a 2. I think that would be a fair assessment on that. Maneuverability is gonna be a fairly high rating because of the job description as well. Job description is... Oh, clowns really human though. Their ability to shove 10 clowns into a 10 square foot car is not human. That is smoke and mirrors illusionist stuff going on. They do not explain how they do that, but I am 100% certain that... Well, actually, no, hold up. I thought of something, but I am not gonna say it because it is way too charged for public consumption. Oh my word. Let's just say I've seen cases where too many people are crowded into too little vehicle. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I'm just gonna leave it at that. It is a known problem. It is a known problem, actually, amongst a civilian population that I am not going to describe. 100% certain. Hold up. yeah, no. 100% certainty from a person who can't remember what they had for breakfast is maybe not the most reliable thing, okay? Maybe not the most reliable thing. Okay. We digress. Might get in trouble with the Clown Corp. The Clown Corp is the least of my concerns, okay? Okay, so we digress. Anyway, we are looking at the maneuverability. So, the job description requires a really high degree of maneuverability and stamina because of the safety aspect of working with large angry animals, distracting them and getting away from them safely. It implies a generally high degree of maneuverability already immediately necessary. I can't say that denim is the best material under the sun for having high maneuverability unless it is in a very good cut. These pants don't look desperately tight, which means that should not be an issue. If we were dealing with someone wearing skinny jeans, I would be worried. We are not dealing with someone wearing skinny jeans. Okay, so it's not going to be an issue there. What does also help is that he has got the suspenders. He's got the suspenders with a belt, which is an interesting combination, but suspenders do generally provide an extra layer of security in terms of your clothing not moving around in disadvantageous ways. So that is actually going to be a major assistance on the maneuverability score, and as far as the outfit is concerned. He obviously can't fly, and he's probably not going to be a contortionist. So I'm probably going to say maneuverability score is probably going to be really, really high, but not like the absolute highest. So I'm going to put him on... comparable characters that we've dealt with. I am going to have to put him on 7 as well for maneuverability. Like there's a lot of implied strength and stamina that goes into that. But we don't know to exactly what extent as well. Because why? I don't know what a rodeo clown is actually expected physically to do. So, I apologize if it's maybe should have been an 8. But we're operating in the realm of, you know, people with wings and literal eldritch multiplanetary entities. Within human ranges, a 7 is pretty high. A 7 is like the highest we can get against what we're comparing against on the average standard for a normal human. As far as brute force is concerned, I feel like the body shape implies also, once again, some relatively high level of physical strength and durability in terms of endurance and such. If we have to have rodeo clowns manhandling large animals, you're not going to do that without some significant gumption behind you. The arm weight and the ratio of chest width to hip width suggests a relatively strong upper body here. It might be stylization, might not be, but we get the sense in terms of the character design of a strong upper body character. So I think as far as brute force goes, we're going to probably do that comparable with a similarly built human, I think. Have we got anyone who's similarly built in human so far? I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah, I think we're going to put him on an 8 because that's also going to be kind of towards the end of what we can expect out of normal humans. We're not seeing the bulging veins and carved muscles on the arms that we'd expect from like a bodybuilder that's got a lot of muscle that's not necessarily functional. We see untoned mass on the arms, which usually implies functional muscle. And I think that is probably an important distinction here. Next thing we're looking at is going to be range. I don't see anything he's going to be throwing. I think if he got into a fight, he would be in melee range most of the time. If push comes to shove, the belt can come off and be used as a whip. Or the tie could also be used as a choke chain in some way. I feel like the suspenders could also potentially be used in a similar fashion. So he's got options for what he could reach for first, and if he accidentally gets disarmed, he's got options in terms of that in a combat scenario. I feel like he would probably absolutely be a melee range. There's no real pocket space for anything that could be carried that would extend that range, I don't think. Not in a hurry. Not while he is in his uniform, anyway. Yeah, because the pocket size on a pair of jeans is not necessarily the best. I wonder if his balloons are magically enhanced. Would a rodeo clown even carry balloons, though? Let's just ask that question, because I don't know. I don't know. If we were talking a civilian clown, who knows? But we with the context that we're given of rodeo clown, we're not given you know, the sense of space rodeo or anything like that. I don't know. I'm pulling alternative contexts or alternative interpretations of contexts here. But like, based on the fashion sense of denim's shirt and general way of the stylization of how this is put together, we've got to assume rodeo on Earth in the last 50 years. I would say. So I've got no indication that there is anything outside of that context that would give a magical score on this. Like, I'm not getting any sense of that additional context that would potentially increase the range with any sort of magic. So, I'm gonna put his range on like a 1 because it's pretty much melee range, maybe with a slight extension with his belt as a whip, maybe. Like, that is very slight extension. It's less than an arm's length extension on range by that. Okay. Next is gonna be adaptability. Once again, given context of his general operation, I feel like he is going to be quite situationally aware, and if he finds himself in a combat scenario, he is going to be incredibly familiar with how to use his environment to his advantage to avoid immediate injury. I feel like that is something that he would immediately have in his back pocket. Fist range, maybe sword range with the belt. Yeah, roughly. But we're now looking at the adaptability. So, definitely has the environmental awareness advantage on that front, and would probably definitely have the skill to scale a fence, you know, as one does when one is escaping large animals on the regular. And definitely has the muscle strength to break a thing that might be necessary, or throw an environmental object that might be useful. Should one find themselves in a brawl. Once again, context of the battle field is necessary, because one's adaptability can vary quite significantly depending on what kind of environment you find yourself in. A terrestrial human, if they find themselves in the vacuum of space without any additional resources, is going to have a tough time. So context is everything. Of what kind of scenarios one can find themselves in. I think for a rodeo clown, that is implied to be on Earth in the modern era, as we currently experience it. The potential contexts in which he will find himself will likely be much more domestic than some of the more celestial scale combats that we have considered with other characters up until now. So, that needs to definitely be taken into consideration. I think we'd more likely be looking at dealing with rampaging animals in the work context, or potentially either a drunk or criminal assault in a domestic context. That would be the two contexts in which I would anticipate this individual finding themselves in a fight. In which case, I'm probably going to have to put the adaptability on a 5, because it is very, very, very much dependent on what he's got in the environment at the time to work with. If he hasn't got anything in the environment that he can take advantage of, and he's just relying on his brute force and endurance to be able to get through a brawl, it depends entirely on what kind of armament the other side of the brawl has. And that could cut either which way. So he hasn't got the adaptability to handle someone who's potentially armed with a gun, I don't think, unless he can somehow dodge all of the bullets and get within grappling range to disarm the guy. So, you're telling me he has to adapt? Yeah, he has to adapt for his adaptability score. He's gonna have his limitations. Like, if you drop him in a field with nothing that he can potentially use, his options are gonna be limited. His options are going to be severely limited because he's not carrying anything that is going to assist him in having options to work with. Literally, his options are basically his own physicality and maneuverability and potentially his belt, as far as weaponry goes. He has those limitations that he would need to be cautious of if he was in a combat scenario. So adaptability, I'm going to put on 5 to account for those limitations. Magic, none is implied, so I'm going to put that on 0. Stealth. His work would usually expect him to be anything but stealthy. I'm not gonna lie. Like, if we're just looking, if he was standing dead still, you would notice him. So on that front, there's very little stealth here. However, he passes the jingle test, which is wild to me. He passes the jingle test because there's literally nothing dangling off of him. But literally everything else yells, I need to be loud because that's my job. The irony of this is amazing. Oh, the irony of this is amazing. Okay, I love it. Okay. So, simply by nature of passing the jingle test, visually, jingly, audibly silent, yeah. Like, scarily enough, that's gonna actually put him on a 4 on stealth, because everything that is not stealthy on him is visual. Literally everything that is not stealthy on him is visual. Like, I don't even know if the nose will make a noise if he squeaks it, right? But he's intentionally eye-catching. So, I suppose if you took him out of the rodeo arena and had him in his civilian wear, in which case I assume there would be significantly less eye-catching features getting out of uniform. He would actually be able to blend in pretty well. Like, if one had to take this outfit and just dull the colors down, I don't know, make the shirt white and get rid of the gloves and get rid of the makeup. Literally, at that point, immediately, civilian stealth mode, you're not going to notice him. It's going to blend in really easily. Hair withstanding, because I'm having a little bit of an interesting time figuring out this hairstyle. But even then, that outstanding hairstyle would be a strictly visual thing. The rest of it is quiet. So, he's got a surprisingly high stealth score. Okay. Crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Next is weapons and ammunition. So, we've already determined that he is not carrying anything. He would at best be able to whip out a belt or his tie or something. To act as an impromptu weapon. So I suppose that puts him at a 2. We've had something similar to that before with Joksai. There's enough options for impromptu weaponry on bits and pieces. And then Gear Alliance, I'm going to put that on a 5, because while we have said that his adaptability is highly dependent on his environment, and we can therefore assume that his ability to put up a fight may also be influenced by what he can find around him accordingly. That upper body build tells me that he's going to have the strength that it takes to at least brawl and wrestle enough to deal with certain circumstances. So I'm gonna have to put Gear Alliance on 5, and assume that is going to be in conjunction with environmental things that he can use to his advantage. He's not completely reliant on it, because he's got the physicality to be able to put up a fight without it. Absolutely has that physicality, given job description. But having the options of environmental tools that he can put to his advantage, that would definitely increase his chances of victory by a significant margin. I think one of the things that makes this particular combat style analysis question that we're trying to answer for all of these character designs is that we're doing so, we have an analysis of a combat style without a clear opponent. So our opponent is not defined in the sense of what is this person's chances of victory. And that means that we're literally just looking at what can this person use to their advantage in whatever context they might find themselves, right? Viably within the context of their world build. I think that's one of the most interesting things about how this entire thing is set up. But yeah, okay, so that was Jolly Joe Bean. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your submission. Surprisingly OP for a human. Well done. Okay. I will be sending you your radar graph and timestamp after stream. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. I should probably hit the like buttons on everything that we have actually talked about so far today. Okay, so we're down to the last two. We are down to the last two. I'm gonna go to dice before we go to Motley, because I've got Motley open on another tab. Because obviously display is behaving weirdly. So next, no, we're not formatting the chart area. And our timing was pretty good. We were 3 minutes off of the next hydrate timer. More time for coffee in the meantime. Woohoo! Coffee, our favorite thing. Ooh, hammer. Yes, indeed, hammer. Hee. I tried to not look at all of the references too hard before we started, because I wanted to have a fresh idea of what everyone was coming in with, just to give not too much erring this way or that in terms of my preconceptions of their designs. All right. Okay. I'm just gonna enjoy a little bit more coffee before we dive in. How are you guys enjoying this so far? Are you having fun? The coffee is so close to being cold. It's sad. I enjoy hearing you nerd out about anatomy and materials and jingling. I am glad you're enjoying it. I'm glad you're enjoying it. This is fun. This is fun, guys. Like the concept of figuring out what kind of strategies people can employ given what they have available to them is fun for me. Like, I find that very entertaining. It's seeing, given a certain set of parameters and resources and blah, what kind of options have they got? I feel like that's super, super fun. And if that enjoyment is coming through, then I'm very, very glad. Right. So, I am going to need to very, very briefly BRB again before we start with dice. And there we go. There's our hydrate timer. Whoopsie. So, I will just quickly finish my coffee, then we'll do that quick BRB, and then we will resume with dice. It's like VTuber lore-wise, maybe you're doing research before a mission? Yes, something like that. Like, how I wouldn't say for myself personally as VTuber lore, but if I were, for example, playing a game of Enclave, the diceless RPG, which I want to play another game of sooner or later. I've only played one game of that so far. It's really pretty fun. But with the Enclave missions, you have very little information to go on because you are operating strictly by the descriptions of the GM. There's no numerical values for how powerful each enemy you might face is, and so on. So you have a lot more of that sort of sense of, would this logically make sense, and would this, within the scope of your character, make sense, and how would my character, given its class with its skills, handle this problem? It's very much in that sort of a vein as well, and I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoy it why I enjoyed that one Enclave game so much. I definitely want to play it again. I want to probably play 1 or 2 more sessions before I attempt to run one myself. Probably I would like to wait until the new version is out publicly before I try and run a game. Because then the rule set will actually be available much more easily. I know the old rule set is still available on the creator's Etsy page, but it's due for an update like now within the next month or 2. So we'll keep you posted when that happens. But yes, almost done with coffee. Then I'm just gonna very, very quickly BRB. I'm hearing birds outside. Oh no, it's already that time. Oh yeah, the sun will already be coming up. Oopsie. And then we will come back for the last 2 for today. I know that we have tentatively got Krahazik on the list as well, but I'm going to sort him out in a standalone session which we tie onto another thing that we're going to do. Speaking of tying on to other things that we're going to do, I am definitely going to be starting on Harrier version 2 model sometime in the run of next week. I've yet to decide if we're going to be doing that on stream or not, but Harrier version 2 model is definitely going to be happening soon. So, yeah, we'll see. Maybe that happens a little bit in stream for at least parts that I can draw on stream without getting bonked. Not many of those in the early parts of the process anyway, but yes, we will be working on Harrier V2 in between other things going forward. So, yay! Excite, excite, excite. Big excite. Hee hee. Coffee is almost done, just like 2 swallows left. Okay, 3 swallows, I lied. Whoops. Okay, I will be back momentarily, and then we will finish up for the day. Okay, we are back, we're back. Right, okay. I just want to check one thing really quickly over here. Yeah, so I am actually running a little bit over time for today. Yeah, I was not ready for that. So I am wondering. I am probably gonna change my mind, guys. I'm so sorry. I am probably gonna save the last two of these with Krahazik for a last batch, or I'm gonna do one of each of them at the start of every stream next week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I feel like maybe that's what we should do. Because I am running over time. And I am going to experience a lot of physical suffering that future me is going to hate me for if I do not call it a day soon, because I know that the world is going to be loud in 3 hours time, and if I don't get sleep, then it is going to end very, very badly, methinks. Because usually the loud things happen on Fridays. Loud things are still happening on Fridays, but there's extra loud stuff happening asterisk today in 3 hours time. In order for future me and Final Fantasy XIV tonight to not end up in a painful disaster, I'm going to make an executive decision to no, I don't want to switch to Emily. I'm going to make the executive decision to call it here for today, and we're going to do the last three in this batch. In the first half an hour of the next 3 streams. So 1 a day for the next 3 streams is what we're going to do. And I'm going to see if I can script a short for reanalysis fight, hashtag reanalysis fight, so that we can have that more clearly defined for submissions going forward. So I'm going to try and put that together. I'm going to really, really try and put that together this weekend. It's going to mean some things on the commission side is probably going to slow down a little bit, but it's a whole lot that's got to get done, right? we got to figure it out, right? All is well. We'll figure it out one bit at a time. But thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you guys had fun. I know I did. We are almost through. I can't believe we're down to the last 2 from the main submissions. Like, yeah. It's a big deal. It's a really, really big deal. And we are slowly but steadily getting our way up to being able to afford the streaming laptop, which is going to be great. Because then we're going to be able to do things like cooking streams and all of those other fun things. So thank you once again, Alex Oldfish, for the contribution on that front. It goes greatly appreciated. I am looking forward to the cooking streams and the treadmill Zatsus. We will definitely be taking that on. I am very much looking forward to those when we eventually get there. Waha! So yes, next week I will be starting on Harrier version 2 model. Yay. Implementing a whole bunch of stuff that I've learned over the last couple of months. Because I will be very honest, Harrier version 1 was built in a little bit of a hurry. Much like my bedroom behind me that you could see, it was built in a little bit of a hurry. So there are things that could be improved. In my Discord, I am currently running a mood board event, which is due to come to a close on the 22nd of February, where if you've got a sense of my vibes, I would ask you to submit a mood board with between 9 and 30 something images. I can't remember exactly how many because my memory for numbers is not functional. But a mood board with pictures, or if you want notes, you can put notes too. I don't mind. For ideas for ways that we can decorate the room, because this is exactly how I got it issued by the Mist God when I arrived, and it could use some personalization. Like, I've been here for almost 2 years, guys. It could use some personalization. Oh my word. Anyway, and that is going to be due 22nd of February. I'm going to check out anything that is in the appropriate channel in my Discord server. I didn't open it up publicly on account of the feedback that I got in the server saying, nah, just keep it casual and close. So if you've got a sense of what you expect my vibes to be, please do put something together. I'd love to see what sort of aesthetic you think will work for me. Frankly, I personally think that my self-understanding of, okay, what is my personal sense of interior design, it could be, it's very utilitarian and very unaesthetic and not impressive to look at all. So I need your help. I need your help, guys, significantly. Interior design is not my strongest suit for me. If it comes to practicality, I can make things work, but if it comes to just make things pretty for the sake of pretty, help. Anesthetic. Yeah, no, like, yeah, you know what I mean. Like, this place is a lovely, lovely, lovely guest house room. It's a lovely guest house type room, but it doesn't feel very personal. It doesn't feel very personal at all. So, if you guys have any ideas for vibes and decorations and things that you think would suit me, please do consider participating. The link for the Discord is available in my whatchamacallit profiles on Twitch, on YouTube, on literally all of my social channels as well. So if you want to join that thing, please do feel free to. Just need some art and knickknacks. Yeah. I'm clueless when it comes to what kind of knickknacks. That's the thing. Like, legitimately, the only knickknacks that I've got, if I think about it, in my current situation, I have I have one Vanderboss acrylic standee. That's legitimately the only significantly knickknackish knickknack that I've got. Aliens and birds. Yeah. We've got scope. Let's build on aesthetics. I like shiny metal and glowy things. That's all I know. I don't know how to translate that into decorations. Channel your inner bird and collect knickknacks for the nest. Yeah. I've always had a very, very strong positive association with crows, and I guess that kind of tracks a little bit. Now, for the longest time, whenever I see a crow, something good always is either in process or is about to happen. I see crows very rarely where I currently am, so it's like, whenever I see a crow, it's like, something good is happening. Yay! it's a happy day. I'm seeing a crow. And their penchant for knickknacks is real. So, like, wrong family of birds for my namesake, but hey, it's who's paying attention to that anyway, right? Right? But no. So yeah, the mood board event is going to be closing on the 22nd unless otherwise discussed in the server. We'll see. But yeah, please consider joining up and participating if you feel the vibes and you feel you have suggestions that we can throw into the pile for ways that we can decorate this place. Literally everything from lighting to decor to furniture options are game at the moment. Okay, so we'll take any ideas and see what'll work. Let me think. Anything else? V2 model thing. Tonight is going to be Final Fantasy 14 with voice acting things. Next week, I will see what happens next week. Everything is pretty up in the air. One thing I can say is that March is gonna be a little bit wild on my side. There is a lot happening IRL. And I am not 100% sure how it's going to affect stream capacity. For the most part, the wild stuff is happening over weekends, so I don't anticipate it necessarily having direct conflicts with streams, but I do anticipate it having impact on commission capacity a little bit, because there's a lot of support work that I've got to do with family business madness. Also, I'm putting on record now already. I have exactly 0 plans for my birthday. So that is on the 12th, which is a Thursday. So it should be a streaming day. But I've got no plans. I've got no event or anything planned for that. If you guys have any thing you would specifically like me to potentially do, please also consider letting me know in the Discord as well. We can workshop something that we can maybe do as a community day type thing. But I'm not gonna hold my breath for it. Yeah. I can't believe that the year is going by as fast as it's going by, but at the same time, it is completely within reason, so... Wild, wild times. Anyway. Thank you all so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. I will see you guys in very few hours for Final Fantasy 14. It should be how many hours now? It is now there. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 and a half hours. No? 15 hours. Okay. Yeah, we're looking at about 15, 16 hours until the next stream. So, I'll see you guys then. We will be doing more voice madness. I don't know how far we're gonna get in the 2 hours that we've got on for that, but we'll see. We'll have fun. And yes, lots of progress being made on commissions in the background. Lots of other things that are being negotiated. So we'll figure things out as it goes. Yes. Have fun. Rest well when you get to it. I'm not gonna raid out, but I appreciate everyone joining by. And until next time, thank you so much for being here. And cheery bye. Night night.